G'day guys and welcome back to the Boundary Riders YouTube channel. Today we're back with another trades rumours video and we've got Jack here with me as we always do with these trade videos, and we've got a couple of today from your club in Port Adelaide along with a lot of other ones that have been servicing over the past few weeks.
Yeah, we've seen, I think, a lot of clubs that look like they're going to have a big trade period, and Port Adelaide is definitely going to be one of them. Swans look like another team that looks like they're going to have a big trade period. And
so we'll start off with one that's been linked to Port Adelaide, which is Radicalier, who has decided to leave Geelong, which is a pretty obvious one that's been simmering for months now, and he's now decided that he's going to depart Geelong. And a lot of one club in particular who's came hard in the past few weeks, especially is Hawthorn, who was offering a massive dollar deal. I can't remember how much it is exactly, but they're definitely offering a lot more than Port Adelaide. It's definitely too much for him, considering he's not even proven to be one of the best defenders in the game.
Yeah.
And they're offering him a lot more than Port Adelaide. So the question will remain if he goes on the money. Obviously, he's going to leave Geelong. If you had to pick between a club, for let's say Port Adelaide and Hawthorn, which way do you think you're leaning here?
I think you're leaning probably 70-30 Port Adelaide. Even
though the money's been coming from Hawthorn, you think Radicalier is going to be looked more?
I think that's what he should be looking at, but money always talks, so you never know.
Yeah, I think I'm probably leaning with you that Port Adelaide are the front runners. They've obviously been very interested in him for multiple years. So I'd say, about a 75-25 split on Port Adelaide, or 70-30, like you said. Another one here is this is actually a couple of weeks ago now. Devon Robertson. Basically, since his shirt got ripped off, he added a bunch of Instagram followers, but also a little bit of interest from the West Coast Eagles. A 4-year deal is being talked about for Devon Robertson from the Brisbane Lions. I think it's a bit of a big call. Devon Robertson hasn't really... he's done okay at Brisbane, but hasn't really proven himself as like a top-tier midfielder or one in the making. So I'm a bit surprised by a 4-year deal for Devon Robertson.
He's from WA, I'm pretty sure, so...
Even if he is though, I mean, do you need to get him on 4 years? No offense to the guy.
He's playing Brisbane.
I get it.
To get into that midfield, so I think it will. I think there's a good chance it will happen because.
If it's a 4-year deal, I think this is definitely. If I'm putting a percentage on it, like we did with the last trade, I'm saying this is about 80% going to happen for West Coast.
I'd say about that 75.
75-80. I think this is definitely a big chance with the deal that this is coming in. If he is a WA boy as well, I think this is a huge possibility of happening. But after that, we get to a little bit of a different one. James Borlas, who is a Crows player who came into the last few games of the season as a key defender. He's currently unsigned at the Adelaide Crows and is a potential trade option for a couple of clubs because the tall defenders now have kind of diminished in previous weeks. Obviously, Tom Barrass was one that dropped out. Borlas is kind of on a different level. He's obviously a little bit lower grade down to these guys. He's probably more of a Sandful ruckman defender more than anything. But he obviously has the age on his side, which could potentially see a club lower down the ladder picking him up. I think at the end of the day, probably Adelaide will just sign him here.
Yeah,
I don't think there'll be much here. I think this is definitely under like a 30% sort of thing for me. Another one as well is the Gold Coast Suns. This isn't really a play. This is more their pick 4. This is definitely up for grabs for most clubs because they are looking to trade out to get points basically for their academy players. So 3 clubs in particular looking at this are Melbourne, Sydney and the Western Bulldogs. At the moment, I think Melbourne probably have the biggest hand though.
Yeah.
Because obviously with Grundy probably going, they're probably going to be looking at a pick. They're saying late 30s, I think, early, late second round, I think. They're not really looking at a first round pick because they don't have a lot of priority on Brodie Grundy really anymore. Who knows, maybe Melbourne will play hardball on Brodie Grundy, but at this stage, Melbourne have got 2 first round picks at the moment, which could potentially see the Gold Coast trade that off. So, and even Melbourne could potentially push down to try and get maybe a late charger to pick 1, I don't know, but at this stage, I think this pick 4 is definitely up for grabs, and I think Melbourne are the front runners.
Yeah, the Gold Coast need picks because they're saying that they're 3 academy players all that could potentially be in the top 10 picks. So they have to have a lot of picks to have the points to recruit these.
So that pick 4 is really going to be. I think they're going to be shopping that around real hard. Another one we talked about as well is Dougal Howard. Talked about, I think it's Callum Toomey on afl.com.au, has said that St Kilda are making Dougal Howard available. So this is actually a pretty big one. Obviously, he did get traded from Port Adelaide, wasn't really wanted there, and now a defensive option is being looked at. And if I'm Sydney right now, I think that Dougal Howard's actually a really capable defender, And I think Sydney would be a great option for him. I mean, that's me saying that as a Sydney supporter, but I'd be a bit surprised if St Kilda are shopping him around, to be honest.
Yeah, like, he's been injured for a bit of the season. They don't think he'll play. He's 50-50 play the elimination final, so it'll be interesting.
I think he was in their best 22 last year and for the early part of this year as well. So
it seems a little quick, I think, to say, oh, he's on the trade table. So
I'm surprised.
Unless his overs come for him and some desperate team wants him, like the Swans or something.
Another one here is probably a player that's been talked about probably the most so far of the trade period, maybe second most. Definitely top three is Bailey Smith. Another club that's joined into the fight with Geelong for Bailey Smith, which is Hawthorn. I just don't know. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think they keep on saying it, and I know obviously when there's maybe a spark, there's a fire for it. But I just don't think he's going. I think his manager Paul Connors even came out and said that he's happy at the Bulldogs. I just don't see this happening.
Yeah. To be honest, the lure of playing more midfield is there.
Yeah.
For especially a Hawthorn, I think, and Geelong, really. They've both got upside to playing more midfield time, but he just seems to be happier we seems to be okay at the Dogs at the moment. So I think, yeah, it's very slim, maybe 30%. 20 to 30%.
I think the Bulldogs will play extreme hardball on this. Next one is obviously the big one, which is Brodie Grundy. At the moment, he's out the door. I don't think that anyone can say otherwise. I don't know. Let's just be honest. He's not going to be in Melbourne next year. I think it's a huge oversight by Melbourne to have even got him and Brodie Grundy's management to send him there.
Yeah.
I mean, we said at the start of the end of the trade period last year, why would Brodie Grundy go to Melbourne of any club? Yeah. Basically, Melbourne, the Bulldogs, maybe St Kilda, and maybe Richmond as well because of Tobin and Curtis. Why? Other than those four clubs, Brodie, you can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Go anywhere in the fucking country. And he picked Melbourne of all. And I think Melbourne's already the highest one up there. You do not go to if you're a ruckman who wants to play games. We even saw earlier than that Braden Preuss go to Melbourne.
Yeah.
And then he didn't get a game there, of course, so he went and left for Giants. And he can't get a game there either, but I mean, obviously he's a bit injured as well. But nonetheless, this really wasn't hallmarked as a good option, and in the end, he's now gone to shop himself, basically, and Port Adelaide went and saw him as met with him the coffee and like sold him the Rosie Butters play or whatever.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you?
I mean, obviously, he was showing off the Bounty Riders medal to his...
Yeah,
obviously.
Exactly, yeah.
Check out that stream, by the way. It was very interesting. It was very good, by the way, even though my brother came over and said it was trash. We didn't say it was trash, but he said that I stuffed up many times.
I get into criticism. But
Rosie Poldwell was, by the way. But anyway, Brodie Grundy, I think, if I'm picking now, it's basically Port Adelaide, Sydney, and maybe Geelong. I think Port Adelaide are definitely in front here. I think this is basically, unless Sydney are willing to pay a lot, like, way too much overs on Brodie Grundy, which, I mean, they do have a bit of money there. I think Port Adelaide all day here. This is what I wanted to bring up as well. Obviously, with Brodie Grundy, if he goes to Port Adelaide, Scott Lycett's way on the outer. And obviously there's people like Sam Hayes as well, who was there. They've actually got quite a bit of depth there for ruck stocks Port Adelaide. I think if there's a trade option here, and I'm going to give you a little fantasy trade or whatever, I'm going to say Port Adelaide trade either... Well, I think Lycett, because he's the oldest. Trade Lycett to Melbourne, bring Grundy in. Because Melbourne then have that second ruck, who's a capable ruckman in the AFL. If he wants to play some more AFL football, you got the chance there. He has proven that he can play forward as well at West Coast. So Port Adelaide trade Lycett over to Melbourne. Port Adelaide get Grundy and maybe a pick or whatever, swaps both ways. Probably a bit more to Melbourne's side because obviously they're trading a Australian ruckman here in Brodie Grundy.
Yeah.
But I think that would be a potential trade here for Port Adelaide.
Yeah.
And Melbourne to get it done.
This trade will be one that will happen on maybe the second or last day of the period because it's going to be a long one. I reckon. Yeah. Both teams are going to play a bit of hardball. They're going to be maybe one or two other teams coming into the conversation for it, I reckon.
I think there's always that one trade in the trade period every year as well. With it's kind of like the domino effect that if this one gets done, then on a bunch of the rest of them
get done. Luke Jackson was last year that everyone was just waiting for his to happen.
Yeah, and then a bunch just tumbled over.
The domino effect happened, and it just.
So I think that's going to be this one as well because this will be Melbourne obviously wanting to get as much as they can out of it to then potentially look at that pick 4 as well.
Yeah,
and I think that obviously Melbourne as well should be looking for a forward in this trade period, which is something I'm going to talk about a little bit later with. one or two key forwards that I want to talk about. Anyway, next one is Liam Henry. He's basically requested a trade out of the Dockers, and which is very surprising because he's from WA. Of all things, he was an academy player for Fremantle. Didn't really get a lot of go until this year. He's definitely proven that he can play as a wingman. And now he suddenly wanted to request a trade. Hawthorn are the front runners at this stage, but St Kilda and North Melbourne are right next to it. Why would St Kilda of all clubs want to go get a speed player? They need to build their midfield depth, their core midfield. They've got Steele and Crouch, that's it. That's all they've got. Don't build on young wingmen. They don't need wingmen. So St Kilda, I think, struck out. I don't think they need to do that. No. And they've been doing it for trade period after trade period after trade period, picking up these wingman players that they don't need. And they've got nothing in their core midfield.
Yeah.
But anyway, North Melbourne, I don't think it's going to happen. I think Hawthorn will get this guy. Will get Liam Henry in the end. And I think
I think it's better if he does go to Hawthorn.
I think the Hawthorn as well can build off this. I think Hawthorn are going to be one of those clubs next year who's going to really... I don't think they'll make finals, but I think they can definitely go
I think they'll be the biggest rises, though.
Alright, now before we get into some more important ones towards the end, I just want to chuck a couple at you. Sam Hayes is also looking at his options. This was from Sam Edmund on SEN. I think this is pretty obvious.
Yeah,
he's been sitting in Port Adelaide's list forever now.
And he got a few games last year and this year, but he seems to be that his pecking orders down to back to fourth.
Yeah, so I think at this stage, I think he will be going, which is another trade option for a ruckman as well. So
yeah,
that'll be interesting. Hopefully, he doesn't pick Melbourne of all clubs if he wants to sits on a bench or play in the reserves for the rest of his career. Anyway, another one is Zach Fisher to North Melbourne. He's been offered a long-term deal by North Melbourne, so this is just Jared Pollock 2.0.
Yeah,
I think they're offering 5 years for him.
Yeah.
He's been okay for Carlton this year of half-back. So... yeah, let's offer him 5 years where he's going to be a All-Australian wingman. Anyway, that's not... I think it probably will happen. No offence to Zach Fisher. But, I think he's B grade at best.
Yeah.
I think that probably will happen if North Melbourne are actually offering that much. But at this stage, wait and see. Todd Goldstein's also been talked about with North Melbourne because they're only offering him a 1 year deal. And there's actually a potential 2 year deal coming from Essendon. Obviously... Essendon actually have a pretty small ruck stocks. They've got Sam Draper as the main, and then they've got Nick Bryan as the reserve. I think this could definitely happen if North Melbourne aren't willing to pay him for an extra 2 years, and I think that's probably fair enough. North Melbourne shouldn't be paying any more than 1 year for Goldstein because, yes, he's been a very good servant of the club, but he's over 33, 34 now. Yeah, he's getting over there.
He didn't play round one because Clark's didn't want to play him. Then Jerry got injured and he
had to play him.
Forced to play him, but. Yeah, with Sammy Draper, he came back for one of the last couple of games of the season, but he got re-injured. He's just been injured, so there's a potential time to play him there. So Essendon, they can offer him 2 years and see what happens.
Another one here is D'Ambrosio from Essendon. He has put contract talks on hold and looking at his options potentially. I think North Melbourne has actually been linked to him, so that could potentially be a trade option at the end. I'm a little bit surprised by that because he has only just got he's only been in and out of the team. Maybe a couple of times he's been the sub, so that's a chance, I guess. Then we've got Tyler Brockman. He wants to go back to WA and West Coast to the front runners. He wants to. I think that's just going to happen in the end of the day. Another one here is Lewis Melican. It looks like that he is also being looked at by North Melbourne. I think we mentioned that a while ago.
Yeah.
I think that could happen if he does want more game time because at this stage Sydney are looking to be getting a big defender. If Sydney aren't looking to give Lewis Melican game time, then maybe North Melbourne will swoop and take him, which is, a fair call for Lewis. Another one as well is Tom Fullerton, who's actually came along quite a bit in the reserves, the VFL this year for Brisbane, is potentially looking to scout the market for a key position ruckman as well. I think obviously ruckmen do take longer to mature most of the time, so I think that definitely a club could be suited for Tom Fullerton at the end of the day.
Not many suitors though, I don't think. He's played a few games, he's very lean, so it will be interesting if he
gets picked up by a club. I just think that maybe there's a chance that he does decide to find a club there. Another one as well, which is one that was linked last year, Fremantle, which was Jeremy Sharp from the Gold Coast. He was linked last year, like I said, but obviously they focused more on the Luke Jackson trade, so they couldn't get Sharp through, but it looks like he hasn't really made much of an impact at the Suns this year, so it looks like Fremantle may potentially go for him again. I think that will definitely happen this year.
Yeah.
Fremantle don't really look like they're linked to too many players, I don't think.
No, I think they're more players leaving than them coming in.
Please stay! So yeah, I think that'll be one that happens. Another one here as well is Chris Burgess. So this is a guy who came in as a supplement player for the Gold Coast a couple of years ago from the VFL. Hasn't really found his spot at the Gold Coast Suns, but had a massive year in the Suns reserve side.
Yeah.
I think the last 2 years he's kicked like 137 goals in the VFL.
He finished equal first for the most goals this season in the VFL, so he's had a good year.
And the one thing as well that he has is he's had a 70% conversion rate in front of goal.
Yeah, he's always been a pretty good kicker. He used to play for West Adelaide, so coming back to South Australia, so...
Yeah, so mentioning that, he's being linked to the Crows, which is a little bit surprising because the Crows do have a lot of key forward stocks. Definitely could happen. I mean, Taylor Walker's got to be replaced eventually, and Fogarty, I think, is probably there to take that mantle, but Phil Thorpe really hasn't taken that mantle as a second forward.
I don't know. I just think that maybe they think he's going to be a ruckman, and Riley O'Brien doesn't have many years.
Yeah, so maybe that's what's going to happen. But Chris Burgess, this is where I get into the tall forwards talk. Maybe a Melbourne could look at these sort of forwards and potentially look at them to move on. And speaking of those tall forwards, another Gold Coast forward who last year played really well in the AFL, who's kind of got demoted this year with the return of Max King, is Mabior Chol. Mabior Chol has been talked about as a potential get for clubs. He hit 44 goals with the Suns last year. So I think there's definitely a chance. I mean, he's proven himself at AFL level that he can kick multiple goals. I mean, that's an average 2 goals a game. But I think a club like Melbourne could definitely use a forward like this because Ben Brown doesn't look like he's going to take that role. Tom McDonald's kind of fallen off. We'll see how he goes in the final series, but at this stage, I think that's definitely a get for some clubs. But basically, the last one I wanted to save was another one which I still think is up in the air for most people, is Ben Mackay. He's been linked to now Hawthorn. Essendon are currently the front runners. They've also got Port Adelaide and the Swans. I just don't know if Mackay would want to go to another bottom club and keep going. I feel like this is why Sydney and Port Adelaide should be further in front here.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing is as well he wants to stay in Victoria because his brother's there. But if you had to pick right now, where is Harry Mackay going next year? What jumper is he wearing?
I think he's going to be wearing the red and black.
You think Essendon?
Yeah, I think so. I think they've been the front runners. Normally the front runner gets it, but it's not like many other sports. In the AFL, normally, most of the time, the front runner gets the play in the end. I'm
going to be like the Stephen Bradbury. I think Sydney are going to come in late and steal him.
Cool.
No, I think so, because I think two things. One, I think Sydney have the money, and I think they're gonna throw bank at him because Sydney lost a big chance to get Tom Barrass, and they were shocked by it. So I think they haven't really gone as hard as they should have to go for Ben Mackay. So I think they're going to come in late, offer him a big bunch of money. And by the way, I don't think this is a good idea from Sydney. I think they shouldn't be going for him. At all, I don't think. I don't think he's that good a defender, in my opinion. But anyway, I think Sydney are going to come in late. I think they're going to get him. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to say. That's what we'll leave you with in this video, guys. Sorry it was a bit long than what the usual one is. I think maybe in the next couple of months or so, we may actually even try to get this out every week. If you got the time off work, we may actually do this every single week because I think we haven't done it for nearly 3 weeks now and it piled up nearly to a recording of half an hour. But anyway, but yeah, I think that's all the trades we have for this video. Make sure to let me know down below what player you guys want to see your club be targeting this off-season. Hopefully your team wins this weekend if they're in the finals. Thanks for watching, but we'll catch you all next time.